Laurel Beavers. This is Nationwide Children's Hospital. They have some big choices ahead of them. When we found out through a former student that, hey, it's pretty overwhelming and pretty daunting task. What we're getting ready to go into the seniors. So, Laurel from Nationwide Children's Hospital.
Test is like a survey, and basically what it does is allows us to know if I'm doing my job well enough to be able to help you guys understand what's going on. And it was a really great response from the middle school folks in the other room. I'll try to get that data to you, but you can go ahead and forward to the next slide. People really felt like they learned a lot of valuable information. I'm sorry?
Go back.
Oh, go back one more for a second. The middle school folks really felt like they learned a great deal. And I think you guys, maybe some of you were able to see it virtually last year. But when I'm doing the presentation, I really welcome questions, comments, whatever it is that you want to add. I think it's really relevant when you have the thought. There may be a slide later that kind of talks a little bit about it, but I really want you guys to really absorb and understand the information to, the best of what we can do here today. So don't hesitate to ask questions. Last year, the middle school was great about asking questions. Can we go on? All right, next slide. Oh, okay, next slide. I guess it'll be in just a minute. To start off, what I want everybody to know is we are talking about a really sensitive, difficult topic. Suicide has touched many people's lives in a lot of different ways. So if at all during this presentation today you're feeling overwhelmed or needing a little break, take it. It's not going to bother me. I want you guys to take care of yourself. It's the name of the game when it comes to suicide prevention. We want kids to be taking care of themselves, and we need the adults to be doing that as well. It's a great model when they're around as well. These are some really great resources that there'll be a slide at the end with them as well. So at one point, I would love for you guys to take a picture of that slide, and I think it might even be in your handouts. But when and if you do encounter someone that's struggling, these are great resources for someone to get help whenever they need it. Next slide. All right, here's the little survey. Survey. It takes probably about 5 minutes or so to go through it. right, next slide. Feel free to continue to fill that out while I start, but I'll just kind of be in the background talking. If it's okay, I'm going to remove my mask for this. I was going to try to do it, but I think 6 foot distance is good for everyone. Okay, so today, first I just want to kind of talk a little bit about what our center does. Our primary function is to train schools to be able to present this ongoing training and for their students. So it's something that we want schools to be able to continue each year. Like Scott was saying, we've chosen 6th grade, 9th grade, and then we're going to do a slightly different program for the seniors. But each year, so over time, everybody in the school will have had it 2 to 3 times. And what we also do is we provide the materials and ongoing consultation for if there is a concern. We also want to, because what we know is that if people feel, when people that are having mental health issues, if they feel like people around them are much less likely to come forward and get help. One of the things that's wonderful about this program is we actually give them a couple different opportunities to get help themselves, which I'll get into in more detail later. I also want to or reinforce ones that people already have. We really, our mission statement is listed here, and really the last sentence on here is what I really want you to take away, is that we really engage each community member to understand their role in preventing suicide. And as Scott was mentioning before, we really saw amazing outreach last year at the middle school, and people really understanding what they can actually do. And so that's the goal, because we each really want our students and youth to strive and be successful and not hurt as much, get the help that they need, and that's what all of you are in position to be able to do. Next slide. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk specifically about your role as school staff, what you can do to help prevent suicide, why suicide actually even happens. The program SOS has this message, easy message acronym, ACT, that we want you guys to know, and hopefully I actually already saw a couple posters when I came in today up from last year that talk about the ACT message, which is acknowledge that you or your friend has a problem, show them that you care, and tell a trusted adult. So we really go over and over that with the students so they understand that it's something that they actually can help other people with and themselves. And so we'll talk a little bit more specifically about our school, the protocol, how that's going to play out in our So suicide rate has continued to climb, and a lot of times we'll say, what's the first cause of death? That's why we have this slide. And what's really amazing about this is how fast we have cell phone laws, we have speed limits, a lot of things that the government and communities have put in place to help minimize that. We saw it as a public health problem, and we got in there and we did some things. And so it's so great about you guys having us here and continuing to get the word out about suicide. We're hoping to continue to make an impact and be able to lower the rates of suicide as well. Next slide. Specifically with high schoolers. So, how common is depression and suicide in high school? Here's a graph of 30 kids. And so, the average classroom is about 30 kids, right? Give or take a little bit. But if you think about it in those measures, next slide. 12 kids in a classroom of 30 have felt so down, hopeless for 2 weeks or longer that they stop doing some kind of their usual activity. That's a sign of depression, a significant sign of depression. It's the base of what depression is. Next slide. 6 of those 30 kids have actually seriously considered attempting suicide. Think about that a minute. So there are 30 kids, or how many, these first 2 rows, there's about 30 kids. 6 of those kids will have actually considered attempting suicide. 5 of them have actually made a suicide plan. And then 3 of them have actually attempted suicide. That's in a given year. That's not over the whole course of high school. This is done by the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's done every 2 years in schools. And that's what they're finding. That's how significant we can play a role in suicide prevention. So youth and young adults in Ohio, if you look at these rates as well. So green is 10 to 14-year-olds. Those are their suicide rates over 2008 to 2018. Unfortunately, there's been a significant increase in suicide with those youth. And then the darker green is all youth, but the blue line is kids that are 15 to 19-year-olds, so you're high schoolers. Next slide. Unfortunately, the rate of suicide has significantly increased for the 10 to 14-year-olds. It's now the leading cause of death, 10 to 14-year-olds. And so we know that even kids under the age of 12 plan, attempt, and do complete suicide. Next. It's the 2nd leading cause of death for our 12-year-olds. It's the 8th leading cause of death for kids under 12. So I know this is all very heavy, serious information, but I don't think people always understand how say that. It's really, it makes sense in a way, like, oh, that information could lead them to it. It has been shown over and over in research that asking about suicide does not increase the chance that someone's going to attempt suicide. If anything, it actually decreases the chance because it gives someone the opportunity to get help. Not only get help, but to feel recognized, to feel seen. When people are depressed and suicidal, they don't even, we're going to go into a little bit more about what depression looks like, but they're overwhelmed. They're not realizing that people even see them, or if they are seen, they're not being taken seriously a lot of times. And that's another big problem when it comes to suicide. Anytime we hear someone say anything about suicide, whether they're saying it in the form of a joke or not, we need to take it seriously and check it out. So how do you ask about suicide? First of all, know if you can, and if you can't, if you hear somebody say something, then go ahead and, get someone in that moment to check it out with them. We don't want to let this linger. We don't want to send an email to the counseling staff saying, hey, I saw this on Jimmy's paper today, or, I heard someone in the hallway saying this. We want to take immediate action. But you can ask indirectly by saying things like, do you wish you could go to sleep and not wake up? That's a suicidal thought. Do you wish you were dead? That's a suicidal thought. There's a difference between suicidal thoughts and suicidal plans and suicidal intent. But those are very specifically suicidal thoughts. They don't want to exist anymore. Some of the direct questions you can ask are, have you thought about killing yourself? Have you had thoughts about suicide? People are going to have different comfort levels with it. It doesn't matter what your comfort level is. Find a way to say it. And actually, what I'd like everybody to do right now is, on a count of 10, I want everybody, or not 10, count of 3, I want everybody to say out loud, are you thinking about killing yourself? Because it's a lot easier to even think it than actually verbalize it, allow it to actually leave your body and ask it out loud. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Did anybody get a weird feeling in their stomach when they actually said those words? A lot of people do. So, really allowing yourself to be uncomfortable with it, but know you're doing it for the right reason. Next slide. So, why does suicide even happen? Well, I already said that it's a complex issue. And it's a combination of things. It's a combination of feeling hopeless, worthless maybe, an intense psychological pain, feeling like a burden, and an untreated mental health illness. Almost everybody that dies by suicide has an underlying mental health condition. There are rare occasions where that's not part of it, but a lot of kids that have maybe ADHD and things like that, more impulsive kids, they may act quicker on doing something and put themselves at risk for suicide. But almost always it has to do with some underlying mental health condition. Depression, anxiety, like I said, ADHD, different things like that. Next slide. So, it's never about one single thing. It's multiple things. There could be a trauma that's happened, untreated depression. We know that if we actually do, if we're able to recognize depression in kids and get them treatment, that actually helps them. It's a protective factor against suicide. Substance use and loss of hope. And if you're feeling that bad and you're feeling hopeless, that can lead to depression. Isolating and withdrawing. These all are consequences and or symptoms of depression. And then thoughts of suicide. So it's this combination of different factors that actually come together that makes someone say, I can't do this anymore. This pain, this psychological pain I'm feeling is too much and I need out. It's not that they want to die. It's they can't go on living with that pain. So let's talk about what the top risk factors are, and then we're going to go into a whole list of other ones. Depression, alcohol and drug abuse, and previous suicide attempts are the top 3 risk factors for suicide. Now, with drug and alcohol abuse, kids that are feeling down and using alcohol or drugs are 75% greater risk of attempting suicide. Kids in our, that's funny if you leave it there, kids in our high schools, it's their number 1 thing, drug of choice, alcohol. And they do it more frequently than we recognize. Well, you guys may recognize it, I'm sure. Other important risk factors to really take into consideration are the psychological aspects. So some of that kind of leads over into, how are they psychologically? What's going on with them? Negative feelings, loneliness, behavioral issues. Sometimes people just think, that kid's just such a, he's just acting out, he's, not doing what he needs to do. Well, there might be a really significant reason why. Biological considerations that we need to really focus on are gender. Boys are 4 to 5 times more likely to die by suicide. Girls are, they're 2 times more likely to attempt. So what's the difference? What do you guys think the difference with that would be? Why are boys more likely to die and girls more likely to attempt? Types of means, yeah. Exactly. So we know that boys are more likely to try to attempt by using more lethal means, like using a gun, which is really hard to recover from a gunshot, and hanging. And girls are more likely to try to overdose, which then we can actually intercede in. We can get them to the hospital. We can get them, their stomach pumped. We can, get them help right then. So it's about the means. Unfortunately, 10 to 14-year-old girls have tripled in their risk for suicide because, actually not risk, actually completions of suicide, because they have been using more means like strangulation or hanging. There's also an important aspect of distress related to being LGBTQ. Whatever anybody's thoughts or beliefs are about that, what we know is that if someone's not feeling accepted in their community, in their home, they're going to be at greater risk of harming themselves, greater risk of killing themselves. It's not about being LGBTQ, it's about not feeling accepted. They've shown through a lot of research that schools that have LGBTQ groups or support systems and things like that, those kids don't have as great a risk. And then genetics play a role. Even so, if someone's parent has attempted suicide, then that child is going to be at greater risk of attempting suicide. Whether or not they even know that their parent attempted, whether they're adopted and living with a different family, it's a genetic piece that we need to be clear about. It can run through genetics and through families. There's also the environmental implications. So access to things. Unfortunately, one of the issues with the rural community is people have more access to weapons. Why is that? Because there's hunting and there's things that are very clearly part of the culture, which shouldn't necessarily be changed, right? That's part of who we are. But we need to take safeguards to make sure that they're locked and that they are held separately, locked separately, stored separately from the ammunition. That greatly reduces the risk of someone dying by suicide when that's done. If there's a history of sexual, physical, or emotional abuse, that increases the risk, particularly sexual abuse. They found that over time, that even into teens and adulthood, even if it happened when they're younger, puts them at great risk. History of being bullied. Again, not feeling accepted, feeling rejected, but also the last part of that is if someone is a bullier, they are at greater risk. Why do you think that would be? They can't be feeling very good in themselves. There's got to be something going on within them that they are lashing out and taking things out on other people as well. And then knowing someone that's died by suicide. I'm sure everybody's heard about suicide contagion. It's a real thing, particularly with our middle and high school students. It's not that it puts the idea in their head. Someone's already struggling with suicidal thoughts, depression, whatever it is, and they see that and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a way out. That can solve my problem right now. So there is this contagion that's really important, and I'm not sure if I mentioned on the first slide, but we're also here for schools for that ongoing consultation for post-vention. If there is a tragedy in the community, we will be here to help the school and the community with that. Next slide. All right, so what's the difference between sadness and depression? A lot of times people are like, they're just sad, they're just having a bad time. And I think it's important to know the difference. And our kids, when we call them from, get them in our classrooms or in the triage areas when we're doing the program, like, I've just been so sad lately. It's been like a couple days and I'm sad. There's a difference between sadness and depression in that sadness is a temporary, natural, and normal feeling that everybody has. But when it gets prolonged for 2 weeks or more, and it starts to affect multiple areas of their lives, then that becomes depression. And it's not something that they can just snap out of, do something fun for a day and be okay. Talk with someone. I mean, there's a lot of great things we need to do to help bolster people if they're depressed, but they also need professional treatment. So, sadness will go away on its own. Next slide. So, since depression is one of the biggest risk factors, let's talk more in depth about depression. It has a lot of different aspects to it. So there's physical symptoms, there's thoughts, there's feelings, and there's behaviors. Let's look at the feelings for a second. I'm sorry, I'm such a whole aren't I? Yeah, just go to the next slide. Perfect. Okay, let's talk about the physical symptoms. Someone just not feeling well. Chronic absences. Chronic visits to the nurse's desk. If they're falling asleep in class, they might be having a lot of trouble sleeping. And that can be a lot of different things about sleep. There can be problems falling asleep, problems staying asleep, and then just not feeling rested. There can be changes in appetite, either eating too much or eating too little, change in weight, either eating too much or gaining weight, or if someone's losing weight. And then physically, their bodies can just hurt from depression, aches, so they don't want to get up, they don't want to do things, they're not feeling well. So if you hear kids that are just not feeling well, obviously we always want to get checked out with the doctor, see if there's a physical condition, but it could be depression as well. Next slide. Thoughts. So this is just kind of like a negative filter that has a cloud over them. Actually, that's one of the images that I always think about. Anybody remember that commercial a while ago? Oh gosh, it was like a stick figure walking down the street and there's a big cloud above her head and all these X's and everything. That's kind of what it feels like, just like this cloud of thing weighting you down as you walk through life. And when you guys think of someone with depression, what do you think they look like? What do you think they act like? What are some of the things that you notice about them?
like, really high.
Really good point. It's not always really detectable right off the bat. And so we're going to go through a lot of warning signs here in a bit that might help us start to pick that out a little bit more. But yeah, people can, be the star athlete, or they can be, the top student in class, but they still might be struggling. Anybody else have any idea of what someone looks like, what you picture as someone that's depressed? So again, it's this negative cloud. It's like nothing ever gets better, everything sucks, I'm a failure, it's my fault, I can't do anything right. Then it also can be these outward things. Nobody likes me, I don't like anybody else, this place sucks. So it's inward and outward that depression flows. Next slide. Then the feelings. So these all make sense, right? Overwhelmed, unhappy, irritable, frustrated, lacking confidence, indecisive. These are things that you guys as teachers really get to see with your kids. What are they doing with their homework assignments? Are they in class? Are they able to actually make decisions and make choices and have confidence in what they're doing? That irritability one on there, I want everybody to really think about, because a lot of times we think, that person's just, man, they're just really rough. They're a bully, or they're whatever. They're just snapping all the time. That irritability can be part of depression. Next slide. Particularly the younger kids. And then behaviors. Are they withdrawing from other people? Are they not getting their work done? Are they having difficulty concentrating? There are changes that are going on in the brain chemistry that actually causes these things to happen. It's not a lack of wanting to do it. It's not a lack of desire to do well. It's their brain chemistry isn't allowing them to focus. It's not allowing them to be able to get things done. Also, increases in alcohol consumption are pretty significant when it comes to depression and or use of drugs. Next slide. Any reaction to those symptoms of depression? Does it give you a little bit of clearer, better idea of what depression can be like? So the other thing about suicide is, so there might be this underlying mental health condition like depression, but there's almost always a triggering event that takes someone from thinking about suicide to actually attempting. Triggering doesn't equal cause. Triggering is the last straw, basically. So someone's already having trouble, already having thoughts of suicide, and then something last happens, and then it's like they can't do it anymore. Remember that intense psychological pain? One more thing, and they're like, can't do it. And so some of those events that are triggering events, these are the top triggering events, they're usually relationship issues, almost always. Now, with younger kids, elementary and middle schoolers, or beginning of middle school, a lot of times it's, issues in the home, parental issues, seeing different things, not having a close relationship necessarily with parents. Some of those things can play an impact. As kids start to get older, naturally our kids are developing socially. That's a natural progression in human development. So a lot of times it may be more romantic oriented towards a boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other. Also, a sudden death of a loved one, especially suicide, of a friend or a relative dies of suicide, puts them at greater risk. It could be the triggering thing, but even a sudden death of someone can be that triggering piece. And then family stressors. And boy, have we had some just community stressors, if not family stressors in the past couple of years, right? So it can be financial issues, it can be, deployment, jail, parents doing, drugs and alcohol and being taken from the home. We know that, these rural communities are really heavily burdened by that as well. And so all of those things can really play a role. What we know is that if you're worried, you got to tell a trusted adult what you noticed, what you're worried about. We want you guys to feel like you are the gatekeepers. That's actually the title of this training. It's a gatekeeper training. But we don't want you guys to feel like you have to solve the problem. We need you to get someone to the next step. We'll go into about 5 or 7 minutes and watch this video specifically about the signs of suicide. It'll give you a better overview of what the program, how it's developed and what it's going to look like. So I'm going to give my throat the rest and you guys watch the video.
Welcome, and thank you for your commitment to championing youth suicide prevention efforts in your school and community. The goal of this video is to introduce you to the SOS Signs of Suicide Prevention program. As you know, the adolescent years can be difficult and stressful. The SOS program is designed to teach both students and adults the difference between normal development and what may be a more serious mental health issue. We are reaching out to you, a trusted adult in your school and community, to give you an overview of what this program aims to do, as well as assist you in recognizing the signs of depression and suicide, and how to respond effectively to students. The seriousness of this issue in schools becomes clear when you look at the facts.
People have to understand that thinking about suicide or feeling suicidal is an indication that there's an underlying illness. That illness is usually depression, which is treatable.
You can recognize depression because it's a change in the teen's normal behavior. So for a teen who used to enjoy certain activities, if that teen no longer enjoys those activities or decides to withdraw, that can be an indicator. But mostly you're looking for change and symptoms that persist for 2 weeks or longer.
More than 90% of youth who die by suicide have a diagnosable mental disorder, most likely depression and/or substance abuse, which are treatable. Alarmingly, 80% of youth with mental illness are not identified or receiving services. Most people are uncomfortable with the topic of suicide. As a result, there is a tendency for people to avoid communicating openly about this preventable issue. But it's time to start talking about it. Half of all mental health disorders start by the age of 14.
What's great about the SOS program is that it champions the youth suicide prevention efforts. It's a universal approach and it offers students a depression checkup and also the necessary tools that they need to seek help.
Our goal is to help students recognize signs of depression and suicide, along with appropriate steps to get help. The purpose of this program is not to tell whether students are depressed, but rather inform them about whether they or their friends may have symptoms that need further evaluation. Through the SOS program, school staff, students, and parents will learn about depression, suicide, and related risk factors with emphasis on a simple help-seeking acronym. ACT. Acknowledge that your friend has a problem. Express that you care. Tell a trusted adult.
I couldn't even get out of bed. I just felt so hopeless.
One of the main benefits of the SOS program is that it gives you a comprehensive understanding of the warning signs of depression and suicide. These warning signs are more prevalent than you might think.
The most important warning signs that a student needs help is something that might be different. Is the student having trouble eating or sleeping? Or are they irritable or moody? Or are they happy one day and sad the next? It's really important to look at what's different and what might be changing in their lives that's not normal.
It's pretty typical when students come into the office and talk about their depression that they'll say things like they are not sleeping the way that they used to, their appetite has changed, they're not interested in the same things anymore.
The factors and warning signs that we see with students who are more at risk of suicide or depression include a history of abuse, use of drugs and alcohol, a history of mental illness, changes in behavior, changes in affect, and involvement with the law.
Other factors that we look for in regards to some warning signs is isolation, impulsive aggressive behavior, previous suicide attempts, access to lethal weapons, for example guns, or even exposure to suicidal behaviors in others.
Another factor that we look for is family history. A youth can be more at risk if they've had another member of their family deal with depression or any other kind of mental illness. We also look for a teen who has dealt with loss. Any significant loss can put them at risk as well.
One particular group that I'm concerned with that's at high risk of suicide is students who are struggling with their sexual orientation, whether they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning. Students that are concerned with this have this fear of being rejected by their family and friends and their community.
I had so many people looking out for me. It just took me a while to realize it.
Some students have a vast support network, while others don't. Think about the people you turn to when you're feeling down. It's common for all of us to want to rely on the people we trust. Support is one of the major elements in what we call protective factors. Students who have a number of protective factors in their lives are less likely to consider suicide.
One of the leading risk factors for suicide is untreated depression. So if you are a young person who's not getting treated, you have more of a likelihood of going to these extreme measures to deal with the pain that you may be feeling. That's why it's so important and it's so crucial for people to get treatment. It can be a mixture of talk therapy, medication, alternative methods, but it's very important to get these issues addressed.
When students participate in the SOS program, they view an educational DVD followed by group discussion. The aim is to create a supportive and responsive atmosphere to recognize the warning signs for those youth who may be at risk and how to seek help.
The ACT message is an incredibly powerful acronym. The SOS program teaches students the letters ACT, acknowledge, care, and tell. Acknowledging that a student or a friend is suffering from either depression or showing signs of suicide is the very first step.
The C stands for care. Let your friend know that you do truly care about them. And the T is to tell a trusted adult. And it's okay to tell a trusted adult, even if your friend gets upset, because it's better to save a life in any situation. You can't own these problems, you can't fix these problems. You need to get professionals more involved.
So these three letters are so important, and it's such a great method to just bring into the classroom and help students really understand what it is they're supposed to do.
I didn't know how to help myself. What I really wanted was just someone to listen to me.
After students view the video and participate in a classroom discussion, they may fill out a screening form. This screening does not diagnose depression, but indicates the presence or absence of symptoms. Symptoms consistent with suicide or depression. Regardless of whether your school uses the screening form, all students will be given the opportunity to indicate whether they would like to speak with someone following the program, either about themselves or a friend. It's important that all school staff know how to respond to students who request help or are exhibiting warning signs.
If a student has disclosed the need for help to a school staff member, that staff member should not leave the student alone. They should make sure to listen and be open and allow the student to feel comfortable with sharing their feelings. And they should definitely avoid making the student feel embarrassed or ashamed about how they feel.
Offering encouragement to a student who is depressed or showing signs of suicide is incredibly important. A lot of times we are the only person that might be encouraging them, might be supporting them, offering them help. And for confidentiality, a student that is showing signs of suicide their safety comes first, so we can never promise confidentiality to a student. Every school district has its own protocol around crisis. So knowing what that protocol is incredibly important for any professional in the building to know. All right, a couple of things. One, we really handled depression, right? But I do want you to know that majority of people that are depressed never consider suicide. They're not going to attempt suicide. But almost everybody that attempts suicide is depressed. So that's why we really want people to understand how significant that is and really what to look for. And to go into a little bit more detail about what they said about the classroom presentation. So there will be some people at the school that are going to be trained to give the presentation. And then in class, they will actually be given a screener that's called the BSAT, that's what they're talking about, that look for symptoms of depression and or suicide. And based on the response to that survey, they'll be brought down to and they're told in the classroom through a slide that if people respond, have significant numbers of these concerns, that we'll be talking with them in the counseling department. In the counseling department, we kind of do a quick triage of, okay, what's going on? Because sometimes depressive symptoms, like I said, it's not diagnosing depression, it's looking for things that may be consistent with depression or suicide. So, what kind of resources they need? Were they just up late studying the night before or there's something, going on that isn't part of depression or suicide? We want to take a look at that. But then if it is considered a concern, then we also have people there in the counseling department that'll be able to do something called a risk assessment and look more in depth to if they're having thoughts of wanting to die or kill themselves, and be able to link them with the appropriate service to get them the help as quickly as they need it. And then also in the classroom, they're given something called a response card. Basically what that is they're basically asked, do you want to talk to somebody about yourself or someone else based on the information you just learned today? So it gives them a chance to come forward about a friend. They're like, oh my gosh, and that's what's going on with my friend, or that's what's going on with so-and-so that I know from art class. But then it's interesting, as I've done this over the years, I actually have kids that come in like, you know what, I was depressed before and I had, different concerns before, and the video really showed me that, I'm starting to go down that path again and I want some help. So it actually allows them to get some proactive help for themselves or for someone else. Because again, sometimes people don't know what to do with these thoughts or feelings. And we are laying it out, telling them this is what's going on, and there are people here that are willing and able to help you. So it's a really great program to just really empower the kids. They started talking about protective factors again in that video, and I want to go into a little bit more detail about that because it's important. Because, school in and of itself is a protective factor. Talking to kids in and of itself is a protective factor. So what else do we need to do to help build our kids up? This is what you guys do on a daily basis. This is what you guys think about. This is your job, and what you have most likely gone this profession to do is to really help bolster kids. So we know that having coping skills, helping kids develop ways to cope, self-esteem, and spiritual faith are all individual protective factors. Access to mental health care. You guys just increased the number of counselors you have at the schools. You're really looking into what you can do to support your kids emotionally, and that's huge. Kids that are linked with services whatever kind of service it is, that is a protective factor. They have an outlet, they have someone they know they can go to and start to discuss and talk about what's going on with them. Other factors, protective factors are, feeling connected, not only with your family, but within your school, within your class, within your team, whatever it is that kids are involved in. If they're feeling connected, that's protecting them. Even socially, making sure that they have the ability to connect socially, which has been tough this last couple of years. With the pandemic, people not being able to do as much as they normally do. Luckily, you guys actually stayed open, and so your kids were able to get that social connection more than a lot of other school districts. But that is a big support. And then I've talked about this before, but it's so important. Restriction to means. We really need to educate the community on restricting means. We need to allow people to understand that, if you have someone that's depressed in the home or suicidal, maybe temporarily, storing your weapons somewhere else. Medications, having them locked up. Doesn't matter if it's prescription medicine or over-the-counter medicine. Kids don't necessarily think about that. They'll take whatever's there as a possible thought of just overdosing. Chemicals. If someone's depressed or suicidal, we want to restrict their access to chemicals, as well as sharps. Now, hopefully, you guys as school staff will start to be able to, families will come to the school and let people know if their child is struggling. And if that's the case, getting with a few of the prominent staff that can help them during their time here at school is going to be good. Next slide. All right, so let's start to put this into practice a little bit. So let's take this student, Taylor. What if Taylor were to be one of our students here at the school? Next slide. Read this paragraph and look for what risk factors are present in the paragraph. So she's always been a good student with a good group of friends. She struggled with depression since her mother died 2 years ago. Taylor's managed to keep her grades up and stay on the basketball team, also while taking care of her younger siblings. What are some of the risk factors you guys see in that? Death in her family, so a loss. Say it again, sorry. Yeah, that extra burden of needing to make sure that they're caring for their younger siblings. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Mask. Yes, so she cares about her grades. That's actually a protective factor. But she's burning them at all ends to try to maintain and keep up. History of depression. All right, next slide. You guys are great. Loss, the depression. Next slide. These are the things that increase the risk. So we went through some of these before. The trauma of losing a parent and is that loss. Okay, next slide. What warning signs do you see? Keep on going with Taylor here. So over the past month, Taylor's friends say she never wants to meet them at the park anymore for pickup basketball. She's been saying things like, what's the point, and none of that matters. Yesterday, her friends were shocked when she blew up and yelled at them to leave her alone. And then today Taylor's first period teacher caught her drinking alcohol from a water bottle. So what are the warning signs in here? Yeah, withdrawal from things that she really enjoys. Alcohol use. Not wanting to be around her friends, being irritable. Absolutely. All right, next slide. So, not wanting to meet up. What's the point? So that negative kind of view of everything. What's the point? Nothing really matters anymore. All right, next slide. Sounding hopeless. Sudden change in behavior, that's what you said. All right, next slide. Sorry, I've got something on here. Bird's face. So what are the protective factors that Taylor has? So she's always been a good student. Solid group of friends. You guys have seen this slide. So what are some of the protective factors you see in here? Yep, basketball team, grades, siblings. Okay, next slide. Can you switch it? Can you switch the slide? But she has kept her grades up. I think someone mentioned that before. What are things that could help in this case? Connectedness, ability to cope, access to care. Next slide. So school is, like I said before, a protective factor. And so, you know, really, you guys see kids actually probably more than parents do during the school year, right? By the time parents get home from work, make dinner, take them to their practices, do whatever other work they need to do around the house, you guys are spending more time. You guys are witnessing and seeing how they're functioning. And so what do you guys do to help build connection with your students? Is there anything in particular that you found helpful? Yeah? Excellent, yeah. And this is all new, isn't it? I mean, we're really having to learn different ways of being. And there are, a lot of LGBTQ youth. And, using your pronouns to let them know they're a safe person to be able to go to is extremely helpful. Wow, I mean, think about how much that would make a difference for someone already feeling on edge or possibly worried about what other people are. I mean, kids in general do that, but LGBTQ youth are even at greater risk. So I'm going to repeat that. You need to come up and get a mic with me. It's really important information. 1 in 4 youth attempt suicide. With using pronouns, it really decreases their potential risk. And there are a lot of LGBT youth that are attempting often, so we need to really acknowledge and support and let them know that they are welcome just as much as anybody else. So, I mean, your school does a great job of, having different organizations and things where people can connect and grow and meet with different peers and adults around school activities and everything like that. Really encouraging and supporting that as much as we can. And when someone's not engaging, why is that? I think the thing that we need to pay attention to, particularly as I said before, when someone's not acting like they normally do, when they're acting out of character, they're withdrawing from things they normally enjoy, and not picking up other things. So there's one thing about, if someone's on the volleyball team, and they're like, yep, I'm not doing volleyball anymore. And then withdrawing and not being part of things. Versus somebody's like, you know what, I really want to try basketball this year. Or some other type of activity. That's a difference. Our kids change what they like and don't like, but when we see people withdrawing and not engaging, that's when we want to look into it. Okay, next slide. So this slide really is just talking about, finding times to encourage students to participate. Individual check-ins. I'm sure there's like a little paper you can have them write. Top things that they want to do, or things that they think they can do, things that they're scared to do. I don't know. You guys are the teachers. She's telling me how to look back to say this way. But, like this woman said up here, is just really letting them know that there are trusted adults in their lives. And luckily you guys have been in person, but opening that door, putting something, sign up, having check-in times, whatever it is you need to do to make sure that they're feeling connected. Next slide. So, if you see someone in need, doing that ACT message for a student, acknowledge that you're seeing the signs of depression or suicide in a student. That's serious. Let the student know that you care, and that if you can't do anything about it right then, that you're going to get them some help. Walk them down to the counseling office or the principal's office. And then follow your school protocol on making sure that you're getting someone informed. Like I said before, I've heard from so many schools that well-intentioned teachers or staff will send an email to the counseling department saying, oh, I'm worried about this student. Don't do that passively. Try to be more active with it, particularly if you hear a significant threat or a concern, somebody's talking about suicide, you want to get that immediate help. But, another good thing is to do a direct handoff, because what a kid's saying to you or in front of you could be different than by the time you get down to the counseling office or the principal's office. They might not necessarily say the same thing that they said to you. So really letting that message go from you to the next person that can then help get them helping. Next slide. So let's practice again, Ms. Taylor. Next slide. So this could be a teacher showing that ACT message. Taylor, it seems like you're dealing with some major struggles. You aren't participating in class like you used to. Next. I'm fine. I don't feel like talking to you. I understand that you don't feel like talking to me, but your friends say that you aren't talking to them either. I care about you, so I'm going to keep trying. People that are depressed, like I said, they can get irritable, they can get grouchy, they can whatever. We need to be persistent. Let them really know that you're in there for them. Next. I said I'm fine. Drinking at school is not something people who are fine do. You can talk to me. Next. All right, now asking the question. Okay, my life sucks. It's not fair, but you don't need to worry about me because I won't be around much longer. All right, we're using our listening skills there. What's that about? People say things like that. It can mean that you're thinking about ending your life. Have you thought about suicide? And like we mentioned earlier, that can be, are you thinking about suicide? Have you thought about wanting to be dead? Have you wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? Whatever is in that situation, what your comfort level, whatever you can do to start that process of letting them know what you're seeing and what you're worried about. Next. Don't freak out, I was just joking. Can't take anything like that as a joke. Don't worry, I'm not freaking out, but it seems like you're really, you're hurting, and I know that things can get better. Trying to provide a little piece of hope there. That little piece of hope, letting them know that you see them and that you're going to do a next step to get them some help. Go on. Next. We have people at school who know how to help. Kids who are dealing with big issues like this. Next. Help out. Next. So whoever the happy to know will know how to get you the help you need. Let's go see her. Let's go see her right now. I don't want to talk to anyone else. I'm just going to get in more trouble. Can we just drop this? Nope, I can't drop it. Too important to me. Let's walk down the counseling suite. They'll help us figure out what to do next. Next. Okay. So a couple things that are important about that. What did you guys see with that interaction? Was there anything that stood out for you? Excellent, yes. I mean, so she wasn't, the teacher, whoever it was, wasn't judging, wasn't invalidating her, wasn't, guilting her, not trying to tell her that she wasn't, thinking about things the right way. She was just like, no, I care. Another thing that she did, she was persistent. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the teacher. Very persistent. And then also pointing out the things that she saw, not what she thought was going on. That's really important. So if you go to someone and say, you really look depressed. Well, that's a mental health condition and can be stigmatizing. So someone might go, I'm not depressed. They might not be willing to hear those words and really recognize it that way. But if you go, you just haven't been yourself. You're drawing. You're not doing things with your friends. You're not talking to them. So pointing out the behaviors that you see, not what you assume or think is going on, really help that dialogue get going better. Yeah, it's fine. So managing your reactions. Give yourself permission to be human. It's common to feel uncomfortable with this topic. Talk to a supportive person beforehand or debrief with someone after if you do have a conversation with someone or concern about someone. But most importantly, never keep what you've learned to yourself. So she's like, just forget about it. It was just a joke anyway. No, I really take this seriously. I care about you. I want you to be safe. We're going to get you some help. You're modeling that empathy. You're modeling that hope. You're modeling that there is something out there that can help them. Next. It's also really important, I know I've said this a couple times, but to not leave the student alone. And then do that direct handoff with the mental health or administrator. And then provide the information that you actually talk to the student about. You can do that in front of the student, or if somebody else can sit with the student while you talk to a mental health professional. If you don't feel comfortable saying it in front of the student, do whatever you can to make sure that counselor really knows the breadth of what's going on. So understanding your role. Is this getting clearer? how you guys can do this. It's probably not too far off from what you guys already do on a regular basis, but you know, reaching out to students if you're concerned, talking to a mental health counselor if you're concerned, with the administrator, and then provide that ongoing care. Doing, you know, if you've had a conversation with someone like this, or you suspect that there's something's going on, doing a regular check-in with them. Just like if someone broke, you know, or they had some kind of surgery, would you be checking in with them more often to make sure that they're keeping up, doing what they need to do, get the help they need? We really need to stop thinking about mental health as just a head issue. We need to understand that our brain is part of our body, which is all then a physical condition. And we need to treat that just as much as the way we would treat a physical condition as well. So really getting them that support is going to be good. There's regular checkups with the child and or parent if you're concerned. Validate the student's emotional experience. If they're really struggling and they're not getting their work done and they're not able to focus and concentrate, you know, it might be like, hey, do every fourth question on that homework assignment instead of every question. Just do, well, I'm talking out of school here. I know that there's people at the school that can help modify workloads, but that should be considered just as much. So.
I'm actually having our protocol that type of safety plan is kind of like the 504 for those types of accommodations.
All right, so there is a type of program that's similar to a 504 for people that have mental and emotional disorders that Heidi would be able to help get set up for students, so they could get a temporary reduction in things or whatever it is that they do to give them some more support around their schoolwork at school. Encouraging meaningful activities, regular routines, and so support networks. Some people feel like, oh, well, if they're really struggling, they don't need to do anything at all. No, we need to keep them, you know, feeling like they're part of things and that they have their regular routine as much as they can, slowly getting back to their regular routine. They might not be optimal at first, but we don't want to dismiss them from any, you know, responsibility. They also need to feel that they are needed and they're responsible and that they can be working towards things. And sometimes it can be support planning and organizational skills that need to be looked at too. And is that part of, Heidi, what you guys do with the plan? Are there support and organizational tools that you guys use for the?
Yeah, it's just like a regular safety plan, but if there's some like anxiety and other things in our work, that's added onto it.
Okay.
Those things are super common.
All right, so yeah, she has a safety plan that's created for these students that will then help them know about how to do a little more planning in the organization, at least get the people that can be helping them with that do that. Next. All right, so this program, SOS, we already showed the video of what actually goes through. But what I really want to point out here is that it's been researched really well across the United States. And it is shown to be a 64% reduction of kids less likely to engage in a suicide attempt. That's a self-report from students that have been through SOS. 64% reduction in attempts. Next. So we're going to be doing it with the high school first part of November. And we have teachers that are going to be on board, and we have the counseling staff at the high school as well as the middle school and elementary schools that are going to be coming to help triage those kids and make sure that we get them linked with the services that are going to be needed for them to be healthy and safe. And you know, this is a big effort, and you know, kids will require follow-up. But as Scott mentioned, we had some really great, what I like to call saves at the middle school, people that weren't on the radar this is really important time to invest in. You know, a day or two of presentations can go a long way. Next. Next. And so, what are some of the action steps that we should take at the high school? Help build those protective factors. Keep an eye out for the students that you think are struggling, and step in. Use that ACT message: acknowledge, care, tell. And then understand, you know, the next steps. And you guys at Jackson have been really great about getting a lot of resources in place. And Heidi's created a really amazing set of safety plan and factors to help the students. And in general, the counseling staff, everyone has just jumped in. Next. We're going to go ahead and take the second part of the survey here. Any questions or thoughts or comments before you guys just get into that?
I think something that I think is helpful in my classrooms, and I do it every year. I give out a paper that just says all about me, and it's fun, and it looks elementary, even though I teach high school, and they can draw themselves as an emoji or whatever it is in the box, and then just ask them random questions about themselves. But I tell them when I pass it out, if there's anything that they want me to know or need me to know, just flip it over, put it on the back of that thing that directly to me. They hand them all directly to me so that I can turn up anyway. And I have found out a lot of things, even up in high school kids would divulge some information that you get, that you can get a lot of information.
You're really spilling on a point here that's so important. If we invite them to share, let them know that you're a safe person to share with, that you're willing to really, you care and want to hear what's going on. That's that acknowledge piece. And then the next part would be to show them you care, following up with them if you're finding something that's important and they could use some support with. And then if it is a step, getting them to somebody that could give them some help. Perfect. It's a great idea.
We have a lot of our kids too, especially like those who are in high school. They all depress and stuff, they don't want to tell. The main reason they're scared.
Yes.
They get embarrassed,
Yes.
and then they don't want other people thinking that they're stupid, that they're crazy.
Right. Yeah. Being ashamed is a really difficult thing with kids not being able to share. One nice thing about this program is that it gets it in a couple ways. It asks them specific questions about how they are functioning, but then also gives them a chance, but then it also gives their friends a chance to say, hey, I see this in you know, the friend, and then we can call them down and gently, the counseling staff can gently kind of talk about, hey, these are what we're hearing, this is what the concerns are, what can we do to help, what do you have that's already helping, kind of talking through those pieces a little bit. Thank you both for sharing. Once you guys are finished with the survey, you can go ahead and do whatever next. I'm not sure if staff, did you want to give them any direction? But thank you all for your attention.
Just a reminder that if you are involved, counselors, the triage training will start at here at 12. And then the presenter training starts at 1:30, and that will be in here as well.
Very, very quickly before we leave, Mr. Wooden shared out the schedule for the remainder of the day. Everybody might be different than the person sitting next to you, so ask questions if you don't know where you're supposed to be. But for anyone that's not included in any of the training be in the triage training at that point in time, okay? We'll do sign-in and CEUs during that staff meeting at 12:45, and then the SOS